Get Mount Vernon SSPA task force meeting. Um, we have some great information to share. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and a nice weekend. And bracing yourself for some inclement weather that we're hearing about. May get some snow flurries tomorrow. So it's back to that time of the year again, right? I think we'll all be wishing for after tomorrow. We all want the hot weather back, I'm sure. So
Today would be fine, Commissioner.
you got that right. You got that right. So we have county staff. We talk about transportation tonight. We have a nice presentation that's planned for us, and want to thank the staff for taking the time to come to the community to provide their presentation for this evening. Once the presentation is done, we ask that the task force members, any questions or comments that you have, you will ask those. And then once the task force have asked questions and made comments, we'll open it up to the public for any public comments or questions that may be out there. So with that, Aaron, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Walter. Mike, if we can bring up the presentation.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Great.
Let's see. No, I can't. No, I can't see it yet.
It's showing on my screen.
Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, I don't know why I can't see it. So I'll tell you what, let me bring up a copy of it on my screen.
So we got the agenda showing now.
Okay. All right. Well, as the agenda screen shows, what we're going to do tonight is present the non-transportation impact analyses first from our partner agencies. And then FCDOT will talk about existing transportation conditions in and around the subject area and talk about what's in the adopted transportation plan. And as Commissioner Clark mentioned, then we'll begin the task force discussion, and then after that, open it up to the public. So, next slide.
We're on the next slide there, Aaron.
Okay. Again, yeah, you probably remember from last time, but I'm Aaron Kleibanner, and I'm with Mike Wing and Graham Owen from the Department of Planning and Development, and Tom Burke is here from the Department of Transportation to present that part of tonight's presentation. So I will turn it over to Mike right now to go through the first half of the DPD presentation, and then I'll pick up the second half of that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron. And maybe we'll be able to figure it out so you can actually see the slides as we're running through them. Yeah, I'm going to be running through the non-transportation impacts. And we'll start first with the land use impacts. And these are just real high level comments here. According to the feedback that we've received, both from the last task force meeting, and then also from the nominator with their outreach to the Fairhaven neighborhood. Generally, the proposed multifamily uses, the density, the heights, and the use of structured parking are acceptable to the community. That's the feedback that we've received up to this point. Staff generally finds the proposed concepts to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, particularly with the enhancements, with the supplemental plantings that are proposed, and the step down design on the Moon site. There is an outstanding question that staff has, or a concern about the proposed underground parking on the Moon Hotel site. We're a little concerned that the existing soils on the site might not be conducive to allowing underground parking, but that's an issue that can be resolved and kind of further explored if the plan amendment moves forward at the rezoning phase. It's more of an engineering question more than anything else. There is one major issue that's still unresolved, and that's the provision of urban park space on the site. And we'll dig into that a little bit later with some more details with another slide. And the next slide here is the quantification table of the proposal. As you'll see, the existing adopted plan has an option for office uses, and it's a pretty substantial amount of office, 150,000 square feet of office. That's not likely to ever happen. There's really no demand for office at this point, at this portion of the corridor. The maximum development potential with the proposed plan amendment with the multifamily would result in 534 dwelling units and 5,000 square feet of first floor mixed use development. The Richmond Highway corridor, along this corridor, the conformance with the highway corridor guidance is going to be very important as it relates to the analysis of this proposal. The topography on the site and the small size of the site doesn't really lend itself well to making the implementation of the grid of streets and the livability spine. And you can kind of see the livability spine, an example of that on the lower right-hand corner. You see that kind of that green area with that cross street that's paralleling Richmond Highway. That's a livability spine as proposed in the core area. And those things really can't practically be implemented with these sites just because of the size and the topography. The other development along the corridor, as I think was raised a little bit earlier before we started the meeting, expects the undergrounding of utilities. And that's a given along these corridors and with the guidance, both the corridor guidance and the PennDOT guidance. There's a intrinsic expectation that the utilities would be undergrounded with vaults, and that what exists along that frontage would all be undergrounded. The Richmond Highway Corridor guidance does include a transit boulevard guidance for that, and it includes an urban street network of recommendations. You can see those recommendations with the figure in the upper right-hand corner of this slide, and it includes a building zone, a sidewalk zone, a cycle track, and landscape panels. And that also includes, I know it's kind of tough to make out the amounts, but there's actual dimensions. There is some flexibility with the implementation of that, depending upon, constraints along the frontage, and the exact measurements would be worked through both during the plan amendment and a potential rezoning in the future to narrow down what the actual dimensions would ultimately be. But suffice it to say that the provision of this guidance based on the highway corridor provisions in this exhibit have to be implemented along the whole corridor to provide a uniform right-of-way with all the redevelopment further to the south. But it's not just the appearance, it's also kind of the functionality of it, particularly as it relates to the bike areaway. Actually, the technical term for that is the cycle tracks. And you can see that as kind of the third element along that exhibit. And again, that would run the full length and would really connect this land bay with the others to the south. One point that I'd really like to make now is that certainly land bay C is not currently, there's no guidance within the PennDOT area guidance. And as we're evaluating draft plan language, we'll have to determine whether or not, how, to include land unit C in that guidance. It'll involve updating some of these exhibits and some of these concept plans. They would also need to be updated if land-based C was to be added. This next slide is a portion of the land bay that we haven't discussed up to this point. I think we might have briefly touched on it last week. Currently, these sites that include the Tobacco King and the 7-Eleven site, and there's also a piece, you can see it here with the aerial. It looks kind of forested a little bit. I think currently there's a parking lot that the owner put in, and they use it as storage. That's part of the land bay also. It is combined to about 0.83 acres. We haven't discussed amongst ourselves what sort of options could be possible. As I said, the current option in the plan is for office, and currently we're exploring what might be possible with these sites. It's a small site combined, and we're taking a look at what sort of replanning options could be added and how it might lay out on the site, including a mixed-use development, retail, or some other commercial use. And after we have a little bit more time to take a look at it in terms of those options, we'll be reporting back to the task force with some recommendations. The next slide here are the affordable housing impacts. And first and foremost, compliance with the county's affordable dwelling unit ordinance and workforce dwelling unit administrative policy guidelines is certainly expected. The WDU guidelines, and I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with this, but for those that aren't, I just wanted to make a few points here. The guidelines recommend that the WD unit mix be proportional to the market rate unit mix. And in addition to that, the WDU should be within 10% of the square footage of the average market rate unit. And then one real big point here is that ADUs are usually preferred over WDUs because they provide deeper affordability. The affordability to households earning 70% of AMI, and that's average income versus up to 80% AMI for the WDU rental units. I don't think that we're talking about for sale units, but if there were for sale units with a residential option, it would go up to 100% of AMI. But all things kind of being equal here, it is possible with the multifamily proposals that the construction type may not necessarily trigger the requirement for ADUs. Just wanted to point that piece out. And that was all that I had on the affordable housing and the other non-transportation impacts. And I'll hand this over to Aaron for some more comments on the park and open space impacts.
Thanks, Mike. So for the Park Authority has a methodology, as probably most of you know, for determining the need for urban park space on site, as stated in the Urban Parks Framework in the Parks and Recreation element of the policy plan. According to this standard, the proposed plan would generate a need for 1.4 acres of on-site urban parkland. And the framework, of course, also has guidelines for the design of these different types of spaces. So at this time, the nominator is not providing the amount of park space generated by the need, but we're continuing to have discussions about that, and we'll again come back to you in the next task force meeting with that. So for heritage resources impacts.
So Aaron, sorry, ask a quick question here before I lose the point. Will there be trails to connect to some of the other parks that are behind this area?
That can certainly, yes, be part of the discussion.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Aaron, I was going to wait till the end, but since Walter brought up questions for this part, did you say the Parks Authority is the ultimate decision maker on this? Like, how does that work out?
Right. So yes, they administer the Urban Parks Framework and the requirements for on-site urban park space. It's right now. I mean, again, we're having different discussions about how to get to the level that they want. Mark, did you have some?
Only if it's appropriate. Only if it's appropriate for me to say something at this point. I know this is really for the staff and the committee, but just to provide a little context, we are looking forward to working with, Aaron and with Graham and the staff to see if we can find solutions. The challenge we've got here is the sites themselves. And remember, this is the third time you've had people come and look and walk away from the site because of the construction costs and like that. Ultimately, we have these big retaining walls. Big retaining walls create a lot of infrastructure that we ordinarily another project wouldn't have. And in order to pay for that infrastructure, you have to have the density necessary. So with the density and with the odd configuration of the lots and the big taking of the highway, that really constricts our ability to provide parkland on site. That notwithstanding, we have worked with staff to look and find for some on-site park things. The other challenge is also, just as we think about this, and again, this is more for conversation with the staff later on, is assuming we even had this, we had 1.4 acres to give away for parkland there. I question, well, I think we'll have to look at the value you would get of that land right on the Parkway, right on Richmond Highway. And I think you can look to, there's a history of other similar sites on Richmond Highway where you've had those kinds of things that have not been successful. So we're working to work with staff. We're looking to work with the community. The staff is doing what they need to do. There is a requirement for this parkland. Staff is doing what they need to do in order to make sure that the community gets the parkland, the resources they need. We'll look for stuff on site. We are also look for maybe other solutions as well, but that's all part of a larger process. But that's unfortunately that's what's different about this site. Rather, this was just a flat piece of land. It's just that it's not a flat piece of land. It's a flat piece of land for which a large part's being taken, and there's unusually compelling infrastructure needs that dictate the need for density.
Mark, I think from the Fairhaven neighborhood perspective, we're on the same page. I think as you're having those conversations, if you want to include us into what suggestions we might have to maybe offset some of that parkland requirement into the local community, local neighborhood, I think we'd be open to that.
Thank you, Kurt.
Any other questions on that point? Okay. Then moving back to the heritage resources impacts. So for the Moon Inn, this was built in 1952, formerly known as the Cedar Lodge Motel.
Hey, Aaron.
Yep.
Aaron, you're on the environmental impact slide.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Can you? Mike, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Which slide did you want? You wanted the
heritage resources impact slide. I still
got
can't
the heritage.
I still can't see it.
Yeah, I've got the heritage up for you there,
Okay.
Aaron.
Thanks. So again, the Moon Inn was built in 1952, formerly known as the Cedar Lodge Motel. And it's not listed on the county's inventory of historic sites, the Virginia Landmarks Register, or the National Register of Historic Places. There were 2 previous surveys conducted for the property in the early 2000s and in 2018. And these reports were done to evaluate the historic significance at the state and national levels for their determination for eligibility for the state and national registers. But apparently both of these surveys determined that the structure was not eligible for those registers. However, we have yet to verify the reasoning behind that determination, and staff has requested copies of those original surveys from the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, and we're still awaiting a reply. But for assuming that that those determinations are verified, the Heritage Resources staff then is recommending an architectural survey be performed now by the nominator to document the site. If those determinations are not supported, then there may not need to be this survey.
Did you want environmental impacts next, Aaron?
Let's see. Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it's up.
Okay. So for the environmental impacts, there are no floodplains, RPAs, or environmental quality corridors on the site. Basically, the recommendations here are that there be stormwater management facilities provided that will control downstream flooding of properties. And also basically that the Richmond Highway Corridor area-wide guidance and the PennDOT area-wide guidance, environmental guidance is pretty much sufficient, so we won't have to add new language to the plan for environmental resources.
I have school impacts up here.
Okay. So the top table on the slide shows the current year and projected year 2029 to 30 school years in terms of school capacities and membership. Currently, Edison High School has a capacity deficit, and this deficit is projected to continue in the 2029-30 school year. Twain Middle School is at capacity now and is projected to have a deficit in the future. Both Cameron and Mount Eagle elementary schools have capacity now, and while membership is still projected to grow in the future, they are projected to be below capacity. The bottom table is showing the potential student yield by school level for the proposed plan, with a total of 58 new students generated if implemented.
I have water
Okay.
and wastewater impacts.
Okay. So Fairfax Water has indicated that there are plans to install a 24-inch diameter transmission main along Route 1. within the roadway and can meet existing and future water supply demands. And all the trunk sewer lines serving the plan amendment area have adequate capacity to handle the flow for the existing use, adopted plan, and proposed plan. Further evaluation of wastewater and water infrastructure needs will be performed during the review of any rezoning application. And do you have the timeline slide up?
I do have the timeline up.
Okay, great. Basically, so as we've talked about before, the next task force meeting is when we hope to have the transportation results of the transportation study ready to present. We'll also present, again, a discussion of our exploration of the Tobacco King 7-Eleven area south of Fairhaven Avenue, and talk about open space and parks. And we'll present draft plan recommendations at that meeting as well. Again, everything is on here as far as the timeline. That it says TBD because, again, as we said last meeting, we don't know exactly when we're going to get the results of the transportation study. What I'll try to do is send out periodic emails about when the study has come in, and what the status is of staff and VDOT reviews, and how we're progressing on that. So I'll try to keep the task force up to date on that, and then give you an idea of when that date of that third meeting will be. So, all right. So now we can open it up to the task force discussion.
Aaron, this is Catherine. I've got a question about the historic nature of the Moon Inn. So depending on the results of what y'all are looking at, what happens if it's considered yay, it's historic?
I don't think that I mean, so Historic Heritage Resources staff will still ask for the architectural survey. I probably in either case. But we need to determine whether those prior surveys and the determinations, at least that we've heard about, are actually valid. Just to give you, the best information.
Well, my question is, if they're valid, then what?
Yeah, Catherine, Aaron, I'm happy to jump in. It will not preclude redevelopment, Catherine. I think if that's to your point.
That's what I meant.
It wouldn't. So we'd get the information whether through the verification of the existing surveys, like Aaron's describing, or with a new survey that looks at the local register. In either case, what we'd be looking at, since we have a redevelopment application in, is just documentation. So mostly just making sure that if there are, we can take photographs of the sites to make sure that we have documentation for the long term and records and that sort of thing. That's kind of the limit of it in terms of our what we'd be asking for with a future application. But it's not something that where we'd be precluding redevelopment or designated a historic overlay district or anything like that.
Okay, for what it's worth, just a throwaway comment. Take pictures of the place, put up a little plaque, just to remember what the highway used to be like, blah, blah, blah. That's over to you, Mark.
We're happy to do that. I mean, there's a history there. I don't know if we want to get into that here, but yeah.
I apologize, everyone. I seem to have forgotten our transportation folks and their presentation. If it's okay with you, we'll let Tom go ahead and do his presentation, and then we'll come back to the discussion, if that's okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Aaron. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Burke. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Department of Transportation, Fairfax County, that is. And FCDOT is tasked with supporting the Department of Planning and Development from the transportation perspective on this plan amendment, as well as every other plan amendment. But we're also working with the applicant and the applicants and their transportation consultant on a comprehensive transportation analysis, which Aaron mentioned that we hope to have for the next meeting. We've been working with them on scoping, methodology, what intersections to look at, etc. So for tonight, we're just going to keep it kind of high level, existing conditions, what the current comp plan recommends, and then what kind of directions we might be going from a transportation perspective. But you all are residents down there, so you're probably familiar that the sidewalks are generally kind of narrow, not a lot of buffers, probably walking right up against the street in most cases. Bicycle facilities are lacking, crosswalks, and bus stops. Pretty much the area is in need of upgrades generally from a transportation perspective. There's also a service drive that is an interesting element here as well. Years ago, service drives were all the rage, and for good reason. They allowed parcels that were next to each other to share access points so that we didn't have driveways all the way up and down. We would be able to limit the driveway spacing, but I do believe when everything kind of develops as the comp plan envisions, the service drive in front of the Days Inn would probably go away, and I think we'll see more of that as this process goes along, and there's concepts. Next slide. Transit. On this stretch of Richmond Highway, if you were looking at it in isolation, there are just two bus routes: the 171, which connects Huntington to the Lorton Lorton VRE station, and then the F1X. I have to admit, I just learned that the Rex is now called the F1X. It connects King Street and Old Town Alexandria with Fort Belvoir. So these are regional bus routes that provide pretty good coverage. And then, as we all know, there will eventually be BRT. I'm probably jumping ahead. There are bus routes. Obviously, there's a Metro Rail station at Huntington, and there's existing routes that go to Mount Vernon Estate and other local areas, the 151, 152, 159, 161, and 162. Next slide. The comprehensive plan, this is the transportation plan map component of the comp plan. So all the areas have these transportation maps, and they outline transportation recommendations, long-term transportation recommendations. The BRT connecting connecting Huntington with Fort Belvoir, phases 1 and 2 are in the comp plan. There's a station to be located at Kings Crossing where the South Kings, North Kings, and Richmond Highway all meet. There'll be a BRT station there. There's South Kings Highway improvements in the plan. You'll notice it's a blue line with a 2 on it. You're going to say, well, it's already 2 lanes, but we have a lot of those types of improvements in the comp plan. I think mostly because a lot of these 2-lane roads in the county were not built to standards. They're lacking turn lanes, or they're lacking bicycle pedestrian facilities. So South Kings Highway is still in the comp plan for improvements, not to be widened, but to be improved and brought up to standards. The comp plan has text in it that talks about the building orientation and how we'd rather the buildings be on Richmond Highway with parking in the back instead of like the Walmart that's out there today, where you have the large surface parking lot with the Walmart kind of in the back. We kind of want to flip that and have a more urban feel. And then there's specific guidance as well, talking about several different elements, like I got that. 1 second, sorry. Ooh. 1 second. So there's grids of streets, for example, PennDOT and Beacon Groveton. You can see on this map, the 2 CBCs each have a series of green lines. So those grids of streets are meant to spur redevelopment in those CBCs from the large seas of parking to structured parking with residential, retail, mixed use. Next slide. This is just a zoom in on that to show a little bit clearer what the transportation plan currently calls for in the Richmond Highway corridor and the CBC. Next slide. And this is something I've been involved with Richmond Highway on and off for about the 16 years that I've been with the county. I've always enjoyed working in the corridor. And one of the big things, obviously, was the Embark Richmond Highway Plan in 2018. It was adopted in 2018, but it was a several-year effort leading up to 2018. A lot of you were involved as well. And we developed cross-sections, typical cross-sections for Richmond Highway. This one's, it was in Mike's earlier presentation, and it focuses on the streetscape, but it's a 178-foot cross-section, public cross-section, and it includes a cycle track, 6.5-foot cycle track, 6-foot sidewalk, a wide buffer for landscaping, and that 2-foot space, 2-foot divider between the sidewalk and the cycle track for utility poles if they're needed. And I agree, there's been a lot of discussion about undergrounding. So hopefully as the corridor develops, all of those above ground poles will go underground. And then there's also the building zone. Oh, sorry, you can go ahead. There's the countywide trails plan as well. It includes major paved trails on Richmond Highway and South Kings Highway. And I think the recommendations for that cross section that had the 6-foot sidewalk and the 6.5-foot cycle track kind of represent what this recommended trail was or is in our trails plan. So it's in the spirit. It's not exactly what the trails plan's been around since the 70s, and a lot of these recommendations are evolving. Some of you may be aware that our active transportation team is in the process of combining the bicycle master plan, which we'll see on the next slide, with the trails plan to create the active Fairfax plan. It's going to combine everything, remove redundancies and inconsistencies, and it's going to be a much more up-to-date. As you can see in the bicycle master plan, there's not a lot here to really chew on. I think because the bicycle master plan was adopted in 2014, the Richmond Highway work was just starting and BARC wasn't quite up and running yet. So the active transportation folks back then, 11 years ago, just made Richmond Highway that pink color policy road. That basically was punting or deferring to the future to make decisions. And then over the last 10 years, we have made a lot of those decisions with the cycle tracks and the sidewalks. So that's why you just see a pink line on Richmond Highway. And then the dark blue dash lines are on-road bike lanes on Huntington Avenue and Fort Hunt Road and Quander. And then the light blue are sharrows. If you're familiar, like share, where the lane is for both cars and for bicycles. And often you'll see that bicycle symbol with the arrows. And to be honest, a lot of these recommendations from 2014, while they may have been consistent with what was, all the rage back then, over the last 11 years, we've come to realize that on-road bicycle lanes on some of these higher speed, higher volume facilities don't make as much sense anymore. So we're moving towards separated facilities like the cycle tracks. And I think a lot of that will be kind of corrected with the active Fairfax plan. And then finally, I'm sure you're all familiar with the bus rapid transit. It's been, it was the Department of Rail and Public Transportation did the study that culminated in a report in 2015. Then the county kind of took the baton and did the Embark Richmond Highway planning. And so now the bus rapid transit team in our capital projects division is trying to get it through to design. I think they're now thinking that it'll open somewhere around 2033. There it is right there. But yeah, it'll connect Huntington Metro to Fort Belvoir. There is a third phase to Woodbridge VRE that is not yet in our comp plan. We're actually replanning Lorton at the moment, and we're having some discussions down there about whether we want to add the third phase of BRT to Woodbridge as well. But there's 9 stations that are currently between Huntington and Fort Belvoir. And while our site that we're talking about tonight isn't on the BRT, it's walkable. to and from the BRT. So hopefully people may choose to live there that might either work south on the corridor. They may also live there because they want to get to the Huntington Metro easily. And hopefully some of them will work in the corridor as well. But yeah, the BRT will run in center median exclusive running lanes. So only the BRT vehicles will be in the median using these lanes. And that's to provide a time benefit so that the buses are not stuck in traffic like the cars are. And that's just a high level. Going back to what I mentioned earlier about the comprehensive transportation analysis that's being done by the applicants and their traffic consultants. We will be working with them and reviewing their work, presenting it in tandem with together. We'll be presenting it to the task force in future meetings, but they'll be looking at intersection operations. They'll be looking at upgrades to the bicycle and pedestrian facilities that are currently planned. Like I said, a lot of the currently planned facilities in our bicycle master plan and trails plan are, a little bit on the older side and need a dose of, an upgrade to more modern thinking. So that's all going to be part of this process. We'll be working with DPD and the applicants and their traffic consultants to make all of that happen. So don't have a whole lot to report to you, but I'd be glad to talk about anything you want to talk about on the transportation side. But at a future meeting, we'll bring back some of that analysis to show you how things are working in the future. Any questions?
So, Tom, this is Walter.
Yeah.
And the county, as we talk more about placemaking and urban streetscapes and what have you, a lot of that is there, but you would continue to work and bring more of those ideas into our meeting as well.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start from what's currently in the comp plan, which is that 6.5-foot cycle track with the 6-foot sidewalk and the 8-foot landscape panel, ideally with trees for shade and for trees not only provide shade in the warmer weather, but they also provide a buffer that provides a level of comfort to pedestrians and cyclists. If they see trees between themselves and the cars, they're probably going to feel a little bit more comfortable. But that will be the starting point, but I'm sure we'll have some discussions about, that's the north of Napa Road cross section that's in the comp plan. I don't see any reason why we couldn't have discussions on that cross section if the task force wanted to talk about it. But that's what's currently being planned to the south with the BRT. And for those that are wondering why we have the same cross section north of Shields Avenue, currently the bus rapid transit kind of turns off of Richmond Highway, goes up North Kings to the Huntington Metro. But 10, 12 years ago, when we initially were talking about BRT on Richmond Highway, some of us really thought it would be a great idea to send a bus rapid transit route up to Old Town Alexandria. And at that time, staff at the city of Alexandria said, don't even think about it. They're like, no buses coming into Alexandria. But I think that was an older mindset 12, 13 years ago. I'm thinking that the city might be a little bit more amenable to it, not necessarily now, but in the future. And we wanted to maintain the ability to send BRT, like maybe some of the buses would go up to Huntington while some of the buses would go to Alexandria. I don't know, that's to be determined, but maintaining the same cross section in front of the Moon Inn and the Days Inn will allow us to potentially have BRT in the future as well, when and if we decide we wanted to send buses up to Alexandria or up to the North Gateway area. So I went off on a tangent, but
Ellen?
Yes, so I'll just I don't have any problem with the FC dot stuff, Tom, but I'll just and I don't expect you to reply to this at all, but I will just make a comment in support of the Bellhaven community. I thought that the bike lanes along Fort Hunt Road up to Route 1 were out because that would take away their parking. So I will just say I know that they are very much against that, as we would be. So no reply necessary, just a comment. But I do have a couple of concerns about a couple of other things. One is the possibility of requiring the nominator to do an architectural survey, and the other is requiring them for 1.4 acres of parkland. And I understand that, there are standards with the county. What I don't want to see is that these things are pushed to the point where it's no longer profitable for the development and it falls apart, or it's just these things happen, and it takes longer for any kind of development plan to come to fruition. So I just, I think the county needs to maybe be a little more flexible in some of the things that they might require. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Ellen.
I'm sorry, this is Lynn Pasco. I can't find my hand to raise at the moment. I apologize. First, let me totally support what Ellen just said about not letting smaller things get in the way of and nothing happening. We've had too much experience with that in the past, and we need to get beyond it and get serious. Second thing, and this is for Tom, I think everybody knows that the Quander Fairhaven intersection with Route 1 is a total disaster, and particularly when we go through it with some regularity. To get to Montebello, I often come down and turn left. And in the first place, the left turn lane is so short that it still blocks all the way back up because nobody can get on it. Secondly, when you start crossing it, the people from the other side keep coming along and you can't see them and you have to duck. So it's going to, point I made last time, is going to take some real creative work there. I don't want it to stop the project or anything like that, but we need to really come up with some way for people to use that road. And I like the idea from last time to look hard at the tobacco shop and 7-Eleven areas to widen the road up a little bit and have a way to make a decent intersection.
That intersection is definitely part of the comprehensive transportation analysis that's being done by the applicant. So that will be part of what we report back to you on, is that intersection.
Thank you.
Sure.
I don't see any other hands.
Yeah.
Mr. Alafaris?
Thank you. I would like to support Ellen's comment earlier. The county staff, I think, really needs to understand that the Richmond Highway corridor is not like the open pasture land that Tyson's was. I mean, I know Ellen was laughing, but when I came here from Vietnam in '71, Tyson's had one traffic light and a bunch of cows. We ain't had cows on Richmond Highway since George Washington almost. And some of the requirements that we're beating ourselves up with are almost juvenile. I mean, anyone who looks at the topography of the Moon Inn and Days Inn will know, where the devil are you going to put 1.5 acre parkland? There's a 30-foot concrete wall back there. There's a park right behind it, the Mount Eagle Park. And the developer last time already spoke about the possibility of a connecting trail. The Fairhaven community that this impacts is in favor of this. And it seems like we're beating ourselves up with trivia, or trying to find things that we can prove how smart we are and stop it. Please.
Yeah, point well taken.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Trail connection sounds great. I think Garrett had his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Walter. I mean, I agree with Ellen on the architectural part of this, and I don't know if you want to dig in this area to find out what you might find. If you might want to look at the news stories from a couple years ago, but the parkland space, the 1.4 acres, I don't think our neighborhood is concerned with that being a requirement, especially on site. I think that's what I talked to earlier about being innovative with it, not slowing the project down, trying to fit 1.4 acres worth of park space on that site. But what else can you do in the neighborhood adjacent to it to kind of meet that need? So just reiterate that point. The second point, Lynn, I appreciate you bringing up about the transportation idea that I threw out there last time around the tobacco and 7-Eleven widening that road. I think that is coincides with what staff's going to come back with next time on how we look at that whole site altogether and rezone that potentially. I would, from the Fairhaven neighborhood perspective, we are very, very interested in seeing the proposals on that parcel of land and what we can do to potentially develop that in the future.
I think Jason is next.
Yeah, I don't know if this is part of the transportation plan or not, but I mean, I think one thing that I just wanted to point out, over here in Huntington, we're dealing with this at the Arden, is an inadequate loading space or for deliveries. And I think in this day and age, you have constant, Amazon deliveries, UPS deliveries, DoorDash deliveries, and so on. Biscayne, we pretty much always have a large vehicle parked over there blocking access to the street as you're coming in and out. And I think the one place where you would not want that to happen is at Fairhaven. And so I just would hope that there's adequate planning and for a loading space that's large enough to accommodate the average UPS or FedEx truck.
Yeah.
Graham, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to provide just a little bit of color to what Aaron was talking about with the Heritage Resources survey, as well as with the Urban Parks recommendations. So the Heritage Resources survey would be something that we're not holding anything up for that. We can proceed with the comprehensive plan as with the information that we have. This would be something where we're telling the applicants that in the future, if and when they submit a zoning application, that would be something. So I just want to make sure that we're not waiting for that information to be able to proceed in terms of the plan recommendations at this point. Just one thing I would mention on the urban parks front. I was in a meeting earlier today with a number of folks. We were talking about development process, and one thing I would mention is that across the county, we have this urban parks framework recommendation for all higher density areas. The 1.4 acres is generated by the total number of units that's proposed. So if there's a lower number of units that are proposed, the acreage requirement goes down. So I would just mention that approximately about 95% of the rezoning applications, I heard this from a zoning planner today, do get to a yes eventually. So there is room for negotiation on these things. What we have is a memo from our Parks Department that talks about what's been generated based on the acreage. And we look forward to working with the applicant to try to figure out what's the right solution here for parks. I will just mention though that on site is the preference, and that's across the entire county. And I'll just say that most of the time we are able to get to a yes on these kinds of things as we get in from the plan to the zoning application. So we look forward to working with the applicant on this and finding a solution that works.
Graham, this is Catherine. I'm on my phone and I can't find the hand thing. Let me just say this. Your comment saying eventually disturbs me terribly because we drag stuff out ad nauseum around here. We don't have enough housing. We all know that. So please, everybody on staff has got to stop saying, well, eventually we get there. The neighbors want this. Mount Vernon Council has wanted this forever. You now have a developer who's ponied up to do something. So we all need to move forward in a rapid fashion, not eventually. Thank you.
Sure, I understood that. I'll just mention it's not up to staff to determine which parts of the comprehensive plan we should enforce or not. So that's the Board of Supervisors call.
Now, I'm very well aware of that, but it's staff that recommends.
Yep.
Ellen?
Yes. Graham, I appreciate that. And I guess my comment was less holding it up, because things get held up anyway. We know that. But requiring that on site or somewhere close to it. And Mark mentioned this. If you do that, it means fewer units, which means, because of the retaining wall and other things, that the project is no longer viable. And that's what happens. So you require things that make it, developer has got to make a profit. Otherwise, what are they doing? We all know that. And I would hate to see this fall apart because some unnecessary 1.4 acres of park is being required. That was my point.
If I could just add one
Understood.
thing.
I'll just real quick, Lynn.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, I just reiterate, it's not up to staff to determine whether or not the 1.4 applies or not. I just want to make sure that it's clear. We don't have the ability to have that discussion.
Yeah, but Graham, staff can certainly say there's a park right behind there, for God's sakes, and that everybody else seems to be able to walk up to that park and use it. It makes no sense to even talk about it together. Maybe a little place to sit and have tea or something, but come on. I mean, this is just not serious.
I would say just staff is doing what they need to do to defend the plans as promulgated by the board. And we're always able to work these things out. We'd like to provide as much as we can on site, and we're committed. We're still in the first pitch of the first inning of this process. We'll work. We will continue to work with staff, and we, as Graham said, 95% of the time you end up getting a solution. We'll find a solution.
Mark, no one knows our frustration better than you do. So
it'll be a great solution for everybody. We'll work with staff on it, but we'll try to accommodate everybody's desires.
Okay, does anyone else from the task force have a question? Okay, are there any members of the public in attendance who have a question? Going once, going twice? Okay. Does anyone have any closing comments or concerns that they want to express? All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. And so again, I'll keep you apprised as to the review of the transportation study. And as soon as we have a good idea of when the next date for the next task force meeting will be, I'll let you all know. So
happy holidays, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Bye.